I'm Sarah, a 40-year-old office worker at a major trading company. My daily routine is to wake up at 5:30 a.m. and take care of my stepmother, Carol. It's still dark outside, and only the kitchen light illuminates me. I prepare Carol's breakfast before I even get myself ready. Okay, is the oatmeal consistency all right? And for the side, grilled salmon with some pickled plums. I mutter to myself as I take the pot off the stove. A few years after I lost my real mother, my father remarried Carol. Carol had a daughter, Lisa, from a previous marriage, and I was happy to have a younger sister. I was 20 at the time, and Lisa was 6. We got along really well, just like real sisters, playing together happily. But tragedy struck 10 years later. My parents attended a relative's funeral, and on their way back, they were involved in a major car accident. My father was injured, but Carol suffered severe injuries, resulting in lasting effects. She became paralyzed on her left side, making her life incredibly difficult. After that, Carol seemed to lose her mind, and when things didn't go her way, she would take it out on my father. Still, my father blamed himself and dedicated himself to taking care of her. My father had been a top salesman at a major automobile manufacturer. From a young age, his sales performance was always at the top, and he rose quickly through the ranks. He was considered a future executive, even a potential board member. But since the accident, he prioritized Carol's care above everything else. Alongside his work, he studied to become a certified caregiver to take care of her. The company was understanding and flexible with his work allocations and hours. While he was grateful for that, he couldn't help but neglect his work. He couldn't forgive himself for that. My father made a decision. He gave up on further advancement and even switched jobs to one with more flexible hours. Financially, his salary was reduced by half, but he gained more time. My father used that time to the fullest extent to take care of Carol. But perhaps, due to exhaustion from caregiving, he developed a heart condition. He had some irregular heartbeats before, but the doctor said it wasn't anything to worry about. However, he was constantly moving from morning till night, not used to the physical demands of caregiving. In addition, Carol was always complaining. I think the stress accumulated unknowingly. He couldn't vent his frustrations, which probably put a strain on his heart. Around this time, I started helping with Carol's care. It's been 13 years since my father passed away, and I took over the caregiving. Carol's stomach has been bad lately, so I've been making her oatmeal every morning for the past few days. But no matter how hard I try, she always complains, so honestly, it weighs heavily on me. I worked for a trading company and had strong aspirations, even dreaming of working abroad. But to balance work and caregiving, I requested a transfer to a department with more telecommuting and desk work. I also considered hiring a caregiver, as I wanted to work outside the home. But seeing how responsible my father felt, and how he cared for Carol, I felt obligated to do the same. Eventually, I couldn't break free from that mindset. I placed the oatmeal on a tray, along with a spoon for caregivers, medicine, and water, and head to Carol's room. I opened the door to find Carol staring at me with a scowl. "You're finally here. Bring it here faster next time." I take a small breath and place the tray on the nearby table. "I'm sorry. I hurried as much as I could." Carol glances at the bowl of oatmeal and curls her lip. "Oatmeal again? You're just like your father. So inconsiderate." A sharp pain pierces my chest, but I try to remain calm. "The doctor said soft foods are easier to digest, remember?" "No excuses. Just get out. You're making the room feel smaller." Her harsh words made me slump my shoulders. "Okay, I'll leave the medicine here. Don't forget to take it after you eat." As I'm about to leave the room, Carol's muttering voice stabs me in the back. "Oh, how I hate this." I pretend not to hear and gently close the door. As I step into the hallway, I notice my smartphone vibrating on the living room table. The screen displays my younger sister Lisa's name. "Hello?" "Oh, hey sis, how's Mom doing?" "Well, more importantly, can you lend me some money?" I sighed before answering. "Money? I don't really have any to spare. I'm swamped with caregiving. But you manage Mom's money, right? You can spare a little, can't you? In the background, I faintly hear Lisa's husband, Mark's voice. Tell her to hurry up and ask. I'll ask her, but don't get your hopes up. Okay. Oh, and sis, make sure Mom doesn't sleep too much. After the call ends, a wave of emptiness washes over me. My sister and her husband have never helped with the caregiving, not even once. They only call when they need money. I'm counting on you to take care of Carol, my father said on his deathbed. I've been trying my best, thinking about his last words. Every time I say it out loud, I feel like I'm being crushed. I open my laptop, which I use for telecommuting, and check my email. It's still dark outside, but the morning sun is starting to peek through. Nevertheless, another day of caregiving and work has begun. The day of my father's funeral was filled with persistent rain, and the sky was unusually dark. I cried repeatedly in the hall lined with white flowers. Dad, I wanted to spend more time with you. My chest felt like it was being torn apart as I gazed at his coffin. Beside me, my stepmother Carol was sobbing loudly. How could you leave me like this so soon? What am I going to do without you? But it was so over the top that even the people around us seemed a bit uncomfortable. My sister Lisa and her husband Mark were putting on sad faces, but I could see them exchanging glances. Mom will inherit the estate, so we should get a share eventually. I heard them whispering, but I was so overwhelmed with grief over losing my father that I didn't have the energy to stop them. The day after the funeral, relatives gathered to discuss the future. My uncle asked if my father had left anything for me before he passed away. It was then that I finally remembered my father's last words to me. Sarah, please take care of Carol. I've caused her so much trouble. I held my father's hand tightly, tears streaming down my face. I understand, Dad. I'll take care of Mom. I promise. I replied, but those became my father's last words to me. My uncle, however, clarified something else. He told me that my father had left a notarized will. The contents were apparently not disclosed to anyone, but Carol had taken it from my father's study. I'm just organizing my husband's things. Is there something strange about that? She said that and didn't show it to anyone. But later, I heard she told my sister and her husband, I'll inherit the estate, so I'll share some with you. Still, I thought, Dad asked me to take care of Carol, so I have to try my best. I followed those words blindly, and as a result, 13 years have passed. If I had known this fact sooner, I might not have suffered so much. Looking back now, I realized that all the gears were out of alignment from the very beginning. But at the time, I didn't have the room or the courage to notice. I simply believed that my mission was to atone for my father's regrets. In the beginning, when I started taking care of Carol, her condition wasn't that bad. She had some physical limitations, but she was still able to move around a little on her own. I had a faint hope that maybe we could make it work. However, as she aged, Carol's physical strength declined while her demands escalated. My workload increased exponentially, like a snowball rolling downhill. Okay, Carol, I'm going to move your arm a little. Let me know if it hurts. As I say this, supporting Carol, who is lying in bed, I feel a constant dull ache in my lower back. Hurry it up. You're so slow that I'm getting even more tired. Her sharp words never change. Rather, with each passing year, the harsh words seem to come more naturally to her. I'm often suddenly called in the middle of the night for help to the bathroom. If I show even the slightest hint of being sleepy, she yells, Why are you spacing out? Don't you see that I'm in trouble? I know. I'll be right there, just wait. Every time I hurry to get up, my sleep time is reduced in inverse proportion. Helping her with bathing is also a big burden on me. Carol, before you get into the tub, I'll wash your body, so lift your arm a little. I bend down, supporting Carol's weight. If I apply force incorrectly, my back screams in pain. But I brace myself, thinking it's better than letting Carol slip and fall. Even in that situation, Carol nasally voices her dissatisfaction. Wash me more carefully. Your way is so rough. It's irritating. I'm sorry. I'm being careful not to hurt you. I'll try to do it better. We repeat the same exchange many times, somehow managing to finish the bath. After the bath, I dry Carol's hair, but I don't have the luxury of watching my own footing. One wrong step on the wet, slippery floor, and I could easily fall myself. But if I fall and hurt Carol, it would be a disaster. She would surely criticize me for being inconsiderate. Whew, today's bath is done. I let out a sigh of relief and sat down on the floor, feeling the pain in my back. As I continued this caregiving life every day, hospital visits are also hard work. Carol has regular checkups and rehabilitation sessions several times a week. Naturally, I'm the only one who can accompany her. To make time, I have to leave work early or adjust my telecommuting schedule. Oblivious to my struggles, Carol complains about the waiting time and the distance to the hospital. But the doctor said this is the best place for you. I try to soothe her, but it always ends up the same way. While waiting for our turn in the waiting room, if you had made the appointment at a better time, we wouldn't have had to wait this long. She continues to make snide remarks, causing other patients to frown. Even in this situation, I'm convinced that I have no choice but to stay. In this situation, I can't work properly, and I'm barely managing. Even when I go to the office, I often have to leave early, constantly apologizing to my colleagues and superiors. I'm so sorry. I have to take my mother to the hospital, so I need to leave early in the afternoon. I'll be absent tomorrow as well for her rehabilitation. It's like a broken record. My coworkers are sympathetic, at least on the surface. But I worry that they're secretly annoyed by the work that piles up in my absence. The person who has always helped me through this is my senior colleague at work, Karen. Sarah, I'm so sorry. You need to leave early again today, so can I ask you to handle this? Yeah, I'm all worried about you collapsing soon. Karen is known for her sharp tongue, but I can feel her concern for me in her words. One day, after an online meeting, she contacted me via chat. Sarah, do you have some time to chat after this? I'll listen to what's on your mind. Really? Thank you. When we start the call, Karen's expression is unexpectedly serious. You're not getting any rest, are you? Being called out at night and all? I'm woken up many times during the night, and it's physically exhausting. I know how caregiving can be like that, but why do you have to do it all alone? Her words are sharp, but true. You have a sister and a husband, right? Why do you have to bear all the responsibility? But Dad told me to take care of Carol, and I don't think I can expect anything from my sister and her husband. Karen bluntly states what she's thinking. Just because you can't expect anything from them doesn't mean it's okay for you to break down. Yeah, I know, but I feel guilty about breaking my promise to Dad. Karen was silent for a while, then took a deep breath and spoke. It seems like you're pushing yourself too hard, holding on to your father's last words. Her words tightened my chest. Surely my father wouldn't have wanted me to suffer this much. But ever since my father told me, even just verbally, to take care of my stepmother, it feels like there's no other option. Thank you, but I'll try a little longer. Okay, but if it becomes too much, tell me anytime. After hanging up, I see my reflection in the computer monitor, a worn-out figure. Oblivious to my struggles, my sister Lisa and her husband Mark seem to be continuing their extravagant lifestyle. Originally, Lisa was Carol's daughter and a quiet child. But after Carol's accident left her with disabilities, Lisa started blaming my father. At the same time, she started seeing me, her stepsister, as the daughter of the person who made her mother disabled, instead of her sister. She started staying out late, and that's when she apparently met Mark. Around this time, she became obsessed with luxury brands and started overspending. Even after graduating high school and getting a part-time job, her expenses exceeded her income. Eventually, she started working in the nightlife industry. Her desire for luxury brands only intensified, and no amount of money seemed to be enough. Mark supposedly had a full-time job in construction, but he got into a fight with a senior coworker and was fired. After that, he became a freelancer, unable to hold down a job for long. He loves pachinko and other forms of gambling, but he hardly ever wins, so he's always out of money. So when they do come to the house, they pretend to worry about Carol and scrounge for money. She is so kind. She always helps us out when we're in trouble. If I ask my sister, she's always so stingy. When they complain to Carol, she says, I have no intention of giving Sarah a single penny of my inheritance, and laughs at me with Lisa and Mark. One day, I overheard their conversation while washing dishes. If Dad's inheritance is really $8 million, just imagine how many designer bags I could buy. That's right. I could play pachinko all day long and still have money left over. It's like a dream, and Mom wouldn't have to rely on that person for care either. That's true. It's been 13 years, and she's still so inconsiderate. It's so frustrating. I need to make sure that person doesn't get her hands on any of my inheritance. I feel something stirred deep inside me, wondering if it's true that my father's inheritance is $8 million. More than that, I'm shocked that they can talk so freely like that when I'm not around. Then, Carol notices me in the kitchen and throws me a sharp look. Oh, Sarah, were you listening? As always, you have such bad manners. Bad manners after overhearing a conversation I didn't even want to hear in the first place? Well, if you don't like it, you can leave, but only if you can ignore what your father did. Carol now blames my father for being in the car that day. She knew that mentioning that would weaken me the most. Lisa and Mark add fuel to the fire, as if on cue. That's right, sis. My mom was disabled because of your dad. Yeah, there's no way you can just abandon her and run away. I stand frozen at the entrance to the living room, clenching my fists, unable to say anything. Anger, sadness, and a sense of emptiness wash over me, but the facts are undeniable. If I retort, Carol will just scream that she wants her original body back. Then Lisa and Mark will join in, and I'll be bombarded with criticism, unable to fight back. Knowing this, I have no choice but to leave the room in silence. Has my devotion and all my efforts over the past 13 years been a mistake? With that unsettling feeling, I had many sleepless nights. One late night, I glanced at the clock. It's past 2 a.m. I had finally drifted into a light sleep when Carol's voice pierces my ears. Ugh, I'm in pain! Sarah! I jump out of bed and rush to Carol's room, where she's clutching her chest, struggling to breathe. Carol, are you okay? Where does it hurt? Stay conscious. I quickly check her pulse, but her face is pale and my voice trembles. If you had come sooner, I wouldn't be in so much pain. As usual, she's being unreasonable, but now's not the time to argue. I immediately call for an ambulance. Calm down and take deep breaths. The ambulance will be here soon. I try to reassure her until it arrives. The siren of the ambulance echoes through the quiet residential area at night. I throw on a jacket, quickly help Carol get ready, and get into the ambulance with her. At the hospital, after an examination, she's diagnosed with an arrhythmia. The doctor tells us that she needs to be hospitalized for a while. I'm relieved that it's not life-threatening. However, during her hospital stay, Carol doesn't use the nurse call button. Instead, she calls me and makes all sorts of demands. Sarah, why did you bring such an ugly nightgown? You're in the hospital, so maybe you should ask the nurses for help. I suggest a few times, but she completely ignores me. Help me to the bathroom. I don't trust the nurses here. I have no idea what she doesn't trust about them, but she just wants me to do everything. The air in this room is bad. Don't just stand there. Open the window and ventilate it. I end up staying at the hospital, barely getting any sleep, and greeting the morning. The next day, I managed to find some time to call my sister Lisa. Carol's been hospitalized. Can you help out? Oh, no way. We're busy. And what would we even do at the hospital? Okay, I got it. But if you have time, please visit her. After hanging up, I'm overcome with exhaustion. It was as I expected, but relying on them is pointless. Do I really have to keep doing this all by myself? I try to convince myself. But after being discharged, Carol becomes even more demanding. If you had taken better care of me, I would be better by now. I'm sorry. I'll try to be more careful. I know that making excuses is counterproductive, so I simply apologize. But my heart has reached its limit. After taking care of Carol's needs late at night, I finally call Karen. As soon as Karen answers, I can't hold back my tears, and my voice breaks. Karen, I don't know what to do anymore. I think you've endured enough, Sarah. But do you really need to sacrifice yourself to this extent? Karen's voice is clearly tinged with anger, probably because she's upset about my situation. But I still have my promise to Dad, and Carol's condition is because of the accident. What if you say that, and you end up collapsing? It's true that it wouldn't help. It'll just destroy you. She's absolutely right, but my father's words, take care of Carol, keep echoing in my mind, binding me. I feel like I'd be betraying Dad if I didn't. I'm sorry I called you, but I'm just being a burden. Don't apologize, but unless you make a decision, the situation won't change. Even after hanging up, my tears wouldn't stop. I collapse onto my bed, clutching my pillow, and cry silently. Dad, I might not be able to do this anymore. My sister and her husband's abusive behavior over the years and Carol's constant frustration were building up inside me. I know that I'm at my limit, both mentally and physically. Even though I understand this, the words, take care of Carol, like chains tighten around my heart. Carol's words, if you don't like it, you can leave, pierce my ears. Maybe they can manage without me. That thought crosses my mind, and I'm tempted to just run away. But the next morning, I'm back taking care of Carol. If I'm called before dawn, I have to get up. I'm caught in this turmoil, unable to sleep again. It's 3 a.m. I try to go back to sleep, but so many thoughts are swirling in my head that I can't. What would my father think if he saw me struggling like this? I can't find an answer, and the sky beyond the curtains starts to brighten. And just like that, another ordinary day begins. One day, I hear cheerful voices coming from the living room. The clock shows it's a little past 2 p.m. I was cleaning Carol's room, but stopped and peeked into the kitchen. The sink is piled high with dirty dishes, suggesting they are here. I quietly peer into the living room from the kitchen. My sister and her husband Lisa and Mark were chatting with Carol. And then, Mom, there's this designer bag I really want. Can you buy it for me? I also spent a bit too much of my allowance, and I'm broke. You too. When will you learn? Well, I suppose if you ask Sarah, she can manage it somehow. I can't believe the conversation unfolding in my absence. Hearing those words, Lisa and Mark grin. You're the best, Mom. I'm your real daughter after all. Yeah, with Mom's inheritance, we won't have to rely on that stepsister anymore. Then, Carol spots me in the kitchen and says in a surprisingly clear voice, My late husband's $8 million inheritance will go to my real children, Lisa and Mark. Lisa and Mark nod vigorously as if to say that's right. I feel like I'm going crazy with anger, and the room starts to spin. Do they realize how much I've done? What would they do without me? Yeah, Mom, she's just an outsider. I felt a ringing in my ears. How can they so easily assume that they'll get the money? How can such an injustice be allowed? Then, Lisa notices me, and with a feigned innocence, turns her gaze towards me. Oh, Sarah, you were there. Did you hear us? Not that it matters. Oh, if you heard, then that's perfect. You're getting nothing, even though you've been working so hard. Sorry, not sorry. I always appreciate your hard work, sis. I slowly walked towards the living room. They showed no remorse, the three of them looking down on me. Carol, do you really mean what you just said? Of course. You may be my late husband's daughter, but we're not blood related. That's true. I don't deny that. It's my decision to give my inherited assets to my real daughter, Lisa, and Mark. That's right. No matter how hard you work, sis, it doesn't matter. Mom already gave us the green light. We're gonna be rich. And then, Lisa stated clearly, If you don't like it, get out. The three of them laughed mockingly. Seeing their faces, something inside me snaps. Fine, then I don't need to take care of you anymore. Carol's eyes widen in surprise, not expecting me to say that. What are you saying? Your father made me this way, and you're just going to abandon me? Are you serious? If you don't do it, sis, who will? Then get my mother's body fixed first. They react to my words, and I feel a cold smirk forming in the corner of my mouth. Because you said it yourself. You're giving your late husband's $8 million inheritance to your real children, Lisa and Mark? What are you talking about? Fine, I'm done. Hey, what's with that attitude? Okay, I'll inherit the estate, but I'll ask Lisa to take care of the caregiving. You're on your own. Surprised by my unexpected counter, the three are taken aback. The inheritance? You're inheriting? What are you talking about? The inheritance is supposed to be ours. It doesn't matter. Just live as you please. I go to my room, grab the luggage I had prepared beforehand, and head to the entrance. Just then, the doorbell rings. When I open the door, I see Karen, who is pulled up in her car. Sarah, are you ready to go? I was worried because I hadn't heard from you. Oh, thank you. Perfect timing. Oh, good. Is that all your luggage? I tell her I'll come back for the larger items later and quickly get into Karen's car. I can hear Lisa and Mark chasing after me and Carol shouting from the living room. But I ignore them and don't look back even once. It feels like a 13-year burden has finally been lifted. I don't know what will happen from now on, but you're okay. You've done more than enough. From now on, live for yourself. As the car drives away from the housing complex, I can't help but let my eyes get a little misty. Thank you, Karen. You really saved me. For 13 long years, I had single-handedly supported Carol, and my struggles were completely lost on my sister and her husband. But that's all over now. The realization that I'm free from caregiving spreads through my chest. It feels like I can finally take a deep breath after such a long time. A month before I left the house, I was tidying up my father's room. I found an envelope marked Important Documents and checked it without Carol finding out. It was, in fact, the notarized will that my father had made, the one Carol had taken. Moreover, it was completely different from the contents of the one I had all along. It was shocking. It stated that my father's estate, including the house and about $8 million in assets, would be entirely inherited by me. Because Carol had hidden it, I had no idea. But then why did Carol think she would inherit? In addition to that envelope, there was another one which labeled Property Inventory. It listed land, stock, and cash. Carol, being his wife, probably saw this and mistakenly assumed that she would inherit everything. Honestly, I was glad she wasn't very bright. My father, while feeling sorry for Carol, must have seen through her and Mark's extravagant tendencies. That's why he intended for me to inherit. I wished I had found it sooner. I consulted a lawyer between work and caregiving and completed the inheritance procedures. Now those people can't touch my father's assets. Well, if they were smart enough to hire a lawyer, I'd probably give them a portion as their legal reserve. I'd pay it as sort of a severance, and they would probably be satisfied. They would probably squander it quickly, though. The sense of relief I felt after leaving the house was immense. I imagined my sister and her husband and my stepmother making a fuss in the living room. Then, the feeling of liberation, knowing I don't have to deal with them anymore, washes over me. Sarah, do you know the address of your old place? Can you guide me? Oh, right. Wait a minute. Let me open the GPS. For a moment, my father's words, "Take care of Carol," flashed through my mind, but my heart is no longer bound by them. Sunlight streams through the car window, and a single tear traces a path down my cheek. But it's not just sadness. There's also a sense of anticipation, knowing this is a new beginning. I used the money I inherited to buy a used apartment. Since I'm living alone, it's not very spacious, but there's a feeling of freedom of not having anyone around, mixed with a strange loneliness. It's a feeling that also includes a bit of guilt. I wonder if Carol is okay. I bet Lisa is taking care of her. I mutter, gazing out the window. Karen, who I had asked to do some shopping for me, returns. Welcome back. Sorry for asking you to run errands. It's fine. Don't worry about it. That's a good point, but that's also your bad point. I had told Karen about the will. She then introduced me to a lawyer to confirm its authenticity. She's truly a reliable senior colleague. Since it was genuine, I asked the lawyer to proceed with the necessary paperwork. After taking a few days of paid leave, I returned to work. Still, I was worried about things back at the house, so I asked my uncle to check on them. I had also informed this uncle that I had left home, and he was very concerned about me. He pretended not to know anything and went to see how things were, and then he told me about it. When my uncle visited, Lisa and Mark were reluctantly taking care of Carol. Caring for Carol was apparently much harder than they expected, and they didn't have time to bother my uncle. He said that due to Carol's demanding personality, there was constant chaos every day. My uncle told me they demanded to know my whereabouts and asked to borrow money to hire a caregiver. At one point, even Carol yelled, demanding that I be brought back for stealing her property. My uncle got fed up and left after less than an hour. "This is so noisy. We don't want to do this either. It's all your fault for running away, sis." "Shut up. Both of you can't do anything right while I'm suffering like this." Apparently things were a mess inside the house. They still seem to believe that they'll get their hands on the $8 million. That's probably why they're grudgingly taking care of Carol. When Carol complained that my care was better than this terrible treatment, Lisa and Mark would yell back, "Don't be ridiculous. We're the ones suffering because you badmouthed Sarah-san." Carol's frustration only grew, and she took it out on my sister and her husband. Amidst all this, Carol raised her voice as if she had suddenly remembered something. "That's right. Find that thief and get my $8 million back. First, check with the banks or something." At the mention of money, Lisa and Mark immediately perked up. They started searching for my father's bank accounts and other assets. But of course, they wouldn't find anything, since everything was in my possession. Carol, thinking they could use that money to hire a caregiver, urged them to hurry up and find it. Lisa and Mark, believing that finding the money would free them from caregiving, searched desperately. Lisa, thinking I had run off with the money, finally called me. I hesitated for a moment, but Karen, who was beside me, urged me to answer. "Hey, where did you hide the money?" "What are you talking about?" Suddenly, Carol's voice cuts in loud and clear. "Sarah, what did you do with my $8 million? "Carol, I told you already. I inherited everything according to the will." "No way, that can't be. I'm your father's wife." "That's right, Mom is the wife, so she should have the right to inherit." I'm honestly scared by how clueless they are. You know a notarized will has legal force. "But the document said property inventory, so the assets shouldn't be yours." As expected, they seem to have assumed they could inherit because of the assets and amounts listed. It's too much trouble to explain, so I won't. But there was something I needed to tell them. The other end of the phone falls silent. I can almost hear them holding their breath. "Oh, and I put the house up for sale, so you need to vacate within a month." I can hear Lisa yelling at me through the phone. "What the hell, Sarah? Are you serious? Kicking us out? Where are we supposed to go?" "Oh, I think you should find a place that's convenient for taking care of Carol." Honestly, I didn't want to sell the house or kick them out. But 13 years have turned me into a ruthless person, perhaps. I couldn't stand it anymore, and the house brought back too many bad memories. I decided I didn't need a house like that, and took the only things that reminded me of my father. I'm not completely heartless. I'll help you with the moving expenses. I can hear Mark and Lisa complaining on the other end of the line, but I think it's a fair amount for severance. You were able to say it clearly. You didn't know that your father intended to leave everything to you. It took a long detour, but you finally turned things around. They must be in a total panic. I nodded silently. A feeling of relief, like emerging from a long tunnel, washes over me. After my call, my sister, her husband, and Carol apparently fell into complete panic back at the house. "What? So Sarah really has everything?" "Mom, what's going on? We're supposed to get it." "I don't know. I had no idea that such a document was made while I wasn't aware. I've been betrayed." "What are we going to do? Where are we supposed to go if we have to leave here?" Their shouts echoed throughout the house. No matter how much they fight, they won't find an answer. It seems their shouting can be heard by the neighbors, causing quite a stir. Imagining Carol's frantic state, I feel a momentary emptiness in my chest. But that feeling quickly fades. "Dad, I did everything I could. From now on, I'll live my own life, I whisper, looking up at the sky outside the window, and the sunlight streams through a break in the clouds. 2 weeks after my ultimatum, the three of them moved into a cheap apartment. Carol, uncharacteristically, approaching my uncle for advice. He said he had no intention of helping, but decided to hear her out. Sarah abandoned me and kicked me out of the house. She said such terrible things. She complained to my uncle. My uncle pretended to listen intently. If she's legally selling the house, you have no choice but to leave, he advised them. Lisa and Mark were still demanding that my uncle find me and make me give them money. They were constantly fighting, even in front of others. When they realized they couldn't get any money from me, they tried to emotionally blackmail my uncle, saying they were sorry and wanted to apologize to me. Then asked for my whereabouts, but my uncle didn't tell them. It was obvious they would just show up at my place. I'm very grateful to this uncle. I sent him some high-end fruits later, and he was very happy. Lisa, on the other hand, was too stubborn to bow her head to someone she had fought with so badly, especially since I wouldn't be there. I have no intention of seeing her either, so I'm glad she felt that way. Mark, as usual, resorted to his escapist tendencies, saying he was busy with his gambling. In the end, they had no choice but to move into a cheap apartment using the money I gave them. However, Carol needs caregiving, so she can't work, and she can't do housework either. Lisa works in the nightlife industry, but the stress from Carol's caregiving expenses is piling up. Mark continues his odd jobs, but squanders everything on gambling, constantly losing. They haven't saved any money, so they have no choice but to borrow when they're in need. Moreover, since Lisa and Mark are accustomed to not being sufficient, their debt quickly spirals out of control. It was too late when they realized it. The demands for repayment don't stop. They are facing the imminent threat of asset seizure. Furthermore, Carol's own health is deteriorating. Without me, and with my sister and her husband lacking caregiving skills, they can't provide proper care. Now, she's almost bedridden, unable even to go to the bathroom on her own. Sarah's care was gentler than this. She starts lamenting, perhaps due to her age. But Lisa, who hears this every day, snaps back. Don't be ridiculous. You badmouth Sarah-san all the time. It's too late to regret it now. Nobody is serious about taking care of Carol. Her condition continues to worsen. They reluctantly consider placing her in a care facility. However, due to gambling and wasteful spending, they are almost broke. They don't have enough savings. They are forced to take out a loan, and their monthly payments balloon like a snowball. This isn't how it was supposed to be. The $8 million was supposed to be mine. Why is this happening? She laments to no one in particular, but there's nothing she can do, and their life is drowning in debt. Meanwhile, with Karen's help, I gradually transitioned from telecommuting back to working at the office. I was slowly regaining a sense of normalcy. I don't have to wake up in the dark anymore, and I don't have to worry about being called out in the middle of the night. My sleep is deepened, and I can clearly feel my fatigue lessening. It feels like it's been decades since I've had such a peaceful morning. The exhaustion that had seeped into my body over the past 13 years seems to be gradually melting away. I'm now able to work full-time again, and I'm more motivated. My boss and colleagues have noticed that I seem more energetic. One weekend, Karen and I went out to a cafe, and we had a long, nice chat for the first time in a while. How are you adjusting to your new life? Well, just not having to be afraid of being woken up in the morning has made me feel so much lighter. I savor the peaceful moment, inhaling the aroma of coffee. Looking back, I might have been too self-sacrificing, but I thought I couldn't refuse because of Dad's last words. It's because you're kind, Sarah, but I don't think that's what your father wanted for you. I nod slightly at her words. I wonder if what my dad really wanted was for me to live my own life, not just protect his assets. Exactly. You undid it for 13 long years. You've done your part. Her words filled me with a warm feeling. I think I'm finally ready to make a decision to value myself, too. I finished my coffee, a slightly sweet and bittersweet taste lingering in my mouth. Sarah, from now on, I want to properly manage the assets your father left you. That's great. He entrusted them to you. You have the right to live freely. Thank you. I want to go on trips and things. From now on, I want to take back my life." Karen smiles and nods. "I know it must have been tough living with them, but it was an act of sincerity toward your father." Tears well up in my eyes at her words. I realize once again how much Karen's support has meant to me. And above all, my feelings for my father overflow in my heart. As I got used to my new life, one day off, I took out my father's photo from the back of the closet. It had been on the shelf in my old house ever since the funeral 13 years ago. I had secretly taken it with me when I left. In the photo, my father has a gentle smile. It must have been taken when I was a child and my mother was still alive. "I'll use the assets you left me wisely, Dad," I whisper, gently holding the photo with both hands. Until now, I had lived my life solely relying on my father's last words. But to think he had also prepared a will. I can see that my father cared about me. If Dad wanted me to sacrifice myself, he wouldn't have made this notarized will. He wanted to protect me. Then Karen comes out of the kitchen. "Sarah, shall we go soon? It's a day off. Let's go shopping or something." "Yeah, let's go." I stand my father's photo on the desk, turning my gaze towards his gentle smile. "Dad, from now on, I'll live my life for myself. I think the message you entrusted to me at the end was to take care of myself. Are you ready? Let's go then." I stand up and get ready to go out. When I look back at my father's photo, it feels like he's smiling and cheering me on. Meanwhile, Carol and my sister and her husband, who I now refer to as the difficult trio, were rapidly heading towards self-destruction. Carol's health continued to deteriorate. Mark couldn't quit gambling, and Lisa's income, despite her supposedly well-paying job, was mostly swallowed by debt repayment. Carol ended up in a cheap nursing home with apparently poor conditions as she had no savings. There, she constantly complains about the poor service and bad food, causing trouble for the staff. Moreover, their monthly payments are often late, so they could be kicked out at any time. Lisa and Mark fight constantly, and eventually, Mark disappeared. It seems his escapist tendencies are consistent. Ironically, they lost everything while chasing after those $8 million. But I no longer feel any pain about their situation. They made their own choices, and I have no obligation to get involved. I firmly close the door of my new apartment, determined never to look back. The 13 years of hardship had finally come to an end. I put on my sneakers and head to the elevator with Karen. While pressing the button, I can't help but say it out loud. The suffering that lasted for 13 years is finally over. But my gratitude towards Dad hasn't changed, because he gave me my life back. I'll walk forward to live a happy life my way. What's that? That's so cool. The elevator door opens, and we step out into the bright sunlight. At the same time, I feel a warmth in my chest, but this time, I believe that warmth will turn into energy. "Thank you, Dad," I whisper once more in my heart, and then I smile.